The question of why some individuals maintain mental clarity, physical activity, and self-confidence into old age, while others struggle from the start of their day, forget important things, and fear loneliness, has long occupied researchers' minds. Why can a 75-year-old enjoy an energetic morning walk, while their peer cannot take a few steps without becoming breathless? The answer lies not in mystical predestination, but in the condition of their blood vessels. The body's blood vessels can be compared to rivers flowing throughout the entire organism. As long as these internal rivers are clean and unobstructed, blood flows freely and unimpeded. In such a state, the brain receives sufficient oxygen and nutrients, the heart functions rhythmically without overload, and overall health remains stable and positive. However, once these rivers begin to clog and accumulate deposits, a process of slow but sure suffocation of the body begins. This doesn't manifest as sudden pain or obvious alarm signals. Instead, an inexplicable heaviness in the legs appears first, followed by a persistent buzzing or ringing in the ears, and then an unpleasant sensation of fog or even dimness in the head. Eventually, the heart, which had been functioning properly, simply cannot cope with the increased load. What exactly happens at this point, and how can such a scenario be avoided? The answer to this question may change your perception of health and longevity. In the 19th century, as medicine began its journey towards scientific progress, lived an outstanding physician, Sergei Petrovich Botkin, who laid the foundations of the Russian therapeutic school. He deeply understood that old age is not a sudden verdict, but a slow, gradual process, beginning with changes in blood consistency. Blood, this vital fluid, becomes thicker and loses its fluidity. If the body isn't helped in time to rid itself of internal impurities, life can end prematurely, without reaching its natural conclusion. Doctors of past eras, unlike many modern practitioners, possessed a unique gift. They knew how to listen carefully to their bodies, sensing even the quietest signals and needs. This discussion will focus on their healing methods, which allowed them to treat blood vessels without resorting to pills or surgical scalpels. If this topic resonates with you, if you feel this information could be a valuable treasure, then don't stop here and continue reading. The knowledge you gain can not only transform your well-being and elevate your quality of life to new heights, but also, potentially, grant you many years of active longevity. You will learn the tragic story of a person who disregarded their body's warnings and made an irreversible mistake. The story of Alexei Ivanovich, an experienced engineer, serves as a vivid illustration of how critical it is to heed the very first signals our body sends. At 64, Alexei Ivanovich was the embodiment of robust health and vitality. His speech was confident and authoritative, his gait calm and measured, and he drove without the slightest need for glasses. A passionate angler, he humorously parried any hints about his age, declaring, "I'm not old, just a little sleep-deprived," even when his closest relatives began to notice subtle changes in his usual behavior. The first, almost imperceptible signs of trouble emerged with the onset of autumn. In the mornings, especially right after waking, he felt an unpleasant numbness in his fingertips and a persistent ringing in his ears. As is often the case, he didn't attach much importance to these symptoms, finding trivial explanations like an uncomfortable pillow or accumulated fatigue. However, About 6 months later, these manifestations were joined by a feeling of constant, though not pronounced, tiredness, a vague sense that something isn't right. A visit to the therapist concluded with only reassuring words. Age is catching up. Nothing serious. Blood pressure is normal. Heart beats steadily. This comforting but unfortunately superficial verdict lulled Alexey Ivanovich into neglecting the impending threat. One day, Alexey Ivanovich experienced an unfortunate incident. He missed a long-awaited fishing trip, having slept, as his wife put it, like a log. The next day he struggled immensely to get out of bed, complaining about his legs suddenly feeling heavy, as if filled with lead. Even then, he didn't attach much significance to it, simply having his usual cup of coffee before heading to the garage for his routine activities. But within a couple of weeks, Alexey Ivanovich found himself in the intensive care unit with the grim diagnosis of thromboembolism, stroke. Tragically, he could not be saved. Doctors later explained to his grieving relatives that his blood had been highly viscous, causing microscopic clots to form during the night and accumulate instead of dissolving. Then, at one tragic moment, one of these clots completely blocked a vital artery, leaving no chance for survival. Such tragedies might seem distant and unreal until your own morning dizziness, persistent ringing in your ears, or inexplicable leg fatigue come to mind. All these symptoms are not merely annoying coincidences, but important signals our body sends in response to emerging problems with the vascular system. If these warnings are ignored, the body gradually begins to shut down, losing one function after another. However, if it's a process, it can certainly be stopped and perhaps even reversed. But how? The answer to this question lies in ancient knowledge, from an era when medicine relied more on the wisdom of nature than on strict protocols, and when healers believed not only in the miraculous power of pills, but also in the body's astonishing ability to self-heal. Nighttime poses an increased risk to the human circulatory system. When sleep arrives, the body appears to enter a state of complete rest, muscles relax, heart rate slows, and breathing becomes measured and deep. However, it is precisely during these hours of apparent calm that one of the most delicate and potentially risky processes activates within the body. Blood circulation slows, muscles are relaxed, and organ energy consumption decreases, leading to a natural thickening of the blood. In this state of increased viscosity, blood loses its usual fluidity, and microscopic clots, which would easily dissolve during active daytime hours, begin to settle on the vessel walls. This process occurs unnoticed, without any pain or overt signs, gradually accumulating on the inner surfaces of arteries and veins. If this phenomenon recurs regularly over several months or even years, dense deposits, known as sleeping clots, form in the vessels. These can remain unnoticed, not affecting one's usual lifestyle. But at a certain moment, with a sudden change in blood pressure, for example, when quickly getting out of bed or turning sharply in sleep, one of these lodged clots can break off and begin its dangerous journey through the circulatory system. If this traveling clot reaches the heart or brain, the consequences can be extremely serious and, unfortunately, irreversible. Morning heaviness in the legs, constant ringing in the ears, or difficulty concentrating on simple tasks are not just signs of aging. They are signals of stagnation, a desperate cry from the blood, indicating a disruption in its normal circulation. However, there is also an encouraging fact. The human body is endowed with an astonishing capacity for self-restoration. Often, it doesn't require radical medications or surgical intervention. The key is understanding the optimal moments and methods for assisting the body. In this context, the insights of the distinguished Dr. Sergei Petrovich Botkin gain particular significance and relevance. He recognized that it is precisely during the night that the body most intensively activates its natural mechanisms of detoxification and regeneration. The primary task is not to hinder this process, but, on the contrary, to support it in every possible way. So what were Botkin's unique insights into the vascular system, which, unfortunately, have been overlooked by many modern specialists? And why do his methods retain their effectiveness even a century later? In the 19th century, doctors did not have advanced technologies like magnetic resonance imaging, ultrasound, or complex blood tests available today. Nevertheless, they possessed something far more valuable: deep analysis and a holistic approach. They perceived the human being not as a collection of isolated organs, but as a complete, interconnected system, where all elements, nutrition, emotional state, physical activity, and sleep, exert mutual influence. It was within this world-view that Sergei Petrovich Botkin, an outstanding figure deservedly recognized as the founder of the Russian therapeutic school, carried out his work. He was among the first to assert that the cardiovascular system is not merely a pump and a network of tubes circulating fluid. It is a complex, living mechanism whose optimal state is the guarantee of health and the full function of every cell in the human body. Botkin understood that with excessively thick and viscous blood, no organ could receive sufficient nutrition and oxygen, and the loss of elasticity in blood vessels, their hardening, immediately triggers a cascade of negative consequences. Arterial blood pressure becomes unstable, the brain suffers from insufficient blood supply, and the heart undergoes accelerated wear and tear. Sergei Botkin did not wait for a disease to reach its peak. He always sought to identify and eliminate the root causes of ailments. Carefully analyzing the course of illnesses in his patients, he noticed that some recovered significantly faster, while others suffered from the same ailments for many years. Botkin identified a pattern. People who adhered to proper nutrition, led an active lifestyle, and helped their bodies cleanse at night, lived longer, and aged more slowly, maintaining mental clarity and vigor. He meticulously documented recipes for infusions that had a gentle but effective action in thinning blood, strengthening vessel walls, and restoring their elasticity. All these remedies consisted exclusively of natural components. Botkin knew precisely at what time of day these natural substances exhibited maximum effectiveness, and why certain herbs, combined in the correct proportions, had an astonishingly powerful cleansing and restorative effect. What was his main secret? Why were his recipes considered so effective that they were passed down from generation to generation as an invaluable legacy? Indeed, in earlier times, healers cared not only for physical health, but also for the mental balance of their patients, striving to restore the body's holistic harmony. This forgotten, yet valuable practice is gradually finding its reflection in modern medicine. Sergei Petrovich Botkin, an outstanding physician of his time, did not limit himself to merely alleviating disease symptoms. He developed unique healing compounds, aimed at deep healing and restoration of the body. One such remedy was an infusion designed for cleansing blood vessels at night, when the body most actively utilizes its own mechanisms of regeneration and self-restoration. The recipe for this infusion was not a random combination of herbs. Each ingredient played a specific role, much like a skilled musician in a well-tuned orchestra, where any false note disrupts the overall harmony. Modern scientific research confirms the medicinal properties of these herbs, yet Botkin, thanks to his extensive experience and insight, understood their benefits long before this. The base of his recipe consisted of 2 tablespoons of dried hawthorn berries. Before use, he recommended gently crushing the berries to accelerate the release of active compounds. Hawthorn is known for its properties to gently dilate blood vessels, lower arterial blood pressure, and promote calmer, more rhythmic heart function. The next component was 2 tablespoons of red clover. Clover significantly improves blood fluidity, helping to dissolve small clots and strengthen vessel walls. It is a mild yet effective natural anticoagulant. The medicinal composition invariably included 3 cloves of garlic, not sliced but gently crushed. This specific processing method facilitates the release of sulfur compounds, which act as a natural barrier against clot formations and serve as a natural cleanser for blood vessels. The mixture also contained finely ground valerian root, known for its vasodilating properties and ability to relieve spasms, ensuring unimpeded blood flow even during deep rest. Completing the composition were 3 crushed bay leaves, actively assisting in cleansing the blood vessels of long-standing salt deposits and toxins that negatively impact their patency and elasticity. All these carefully selected components were steeped in half a liter of choice vodka or medicinal alcohol. The mixture was left to infuse in a dark place for 10 days, with daily shaking of the contents. Upon completion of this period, the tincture was carefully strained through a cheesecloth filter, poured into a dark glass container, and stored in the refrigerator. It was recommended to consume 20 drops, diluted in half a glass of warm water, directly before bedtime. Nighttime, when the body actively initiates self-cleansing processes, was considered optimal for the tincture's action, allowing it to work with maximum depth and effectiveness, supporting natural restoration mechanisms. Weeks pass, and one realizes with astonishment the positive transformations in their well-being: lightness in the legs, disappearance of morning swelling and heaviness, stabilization of blood pressure, and an end to morning dizziness. But what happens if these signals are neglected? What are the consequences of ignoring the body's needs and continuing the destructive impact on blood vessels? Laws of the body. What happens if they are ignored? The human body is a complex system that does not break down suddenly. It continuously sends signals, often subtle, which, unfortunately, are frequently ignored until a critical point. When blood thickens and its viscosity increases, the brain begins to suffer from oxygen deprivation. This first manifests as mild fatigue, then reduced concentration and impaired memory, and subsequently, flashes of irritability and anxiety may arise. Such symptoms are often attributed to stress, weather conditions, or age-related changes, but in reality, these are signals sent by the blood vessels desperately trying to warn of impending danger. Clogged blood vessels are not merely a threat of sudden stroke or heart attack. They represent an insidious, relentless fading of the body's vital forces, manifesting as exhausting chronic fatigue that even prolonged rest cannot alleviate, sleep disturbances marked by restless awakenings in the middle of the night, and the oppressive feeling of internal discomfort, even when all medical indicators are still within normal limits. It's a state where the soul is tormented by causeless anxiety, and the body cannot pinpoint the source of its malaise. And the most terrible part is that one gradually becomes accustomed to this ailment. Year after year, a person adapts to existing in a semi-sleepy, semi-conscious state, until one fateful day the body capitulates without warning, having exhausted all its resources in struggling against the burden. However, nature has endowed humans with an astonishing capacity for self-restoration. The body tirelessly strives for cleansing, attempting to do so every night. The task is simply not to impede this process and to provide the necessary resources. The great physician, Sergei Petrovich Botkin, rightly asserted, to treat illness is to lose time. It is far wiser and more far-sighted to prevent its onset. This is precisely why his famous tincture had such a delicate yet profound effect. It did not disrupt the body's natural processes. On the contrary, it stimulated those already inherent in it by nature. But even such a universal remedy as Botkin's tincture is not suitable for everyone. Further on, the reader will learn who it might harm, despite all its obvious merits. When a person possesses the ability to feel their body and understand its cues, it indicates an advanced level of self-awareness. The body constantly sends signals that are often ignored, but by listening to them, one can gain valuable information about their condition. However, even the most natural and beneficial remedies can cause harm if used without considering the body's individual characteristics and a deep understanding of their effects. Botkin's recipe, known for its cleansing and restorative properties for blood vessels, is no exception. In some cases, the body might react to it unpredictably. For example, in individuals with low blood pressure, the tincture containing hawthorn and valerian, part of the recipe, could cause an undesirable amplification of its hypotensive effect. Blood might become too thin, leading to weakness, dizziness, and even fainting. When taking blood-thinning medications concurrently with the tincture containing garlic and clover, there is a risk of excessive blood thinning. This condition is extremely dangerous, especially if hidden internal bleeding is present and might go unnoticed. Individuals suffering from peptic ulcers or gastritis should exercise particular caution. Garlic and bay leaf, included in the tincture, can irritate the stomach lining and exacerbate inflammatory processes. The presence of an allergy to any of the components is an absolute contraindication for use. Even the most effective formula can prove toxic if the body rejects it. Pregnant and breastfeeding women are advised against using Botkin's tincture, as even mild plant substances can affect hormonal balance and cause unpredictable reactions that could harm both mother and child. Nevertheless, in the absence of contraindications, this remedy can become a reliable aid, gently cleansing blood vessels and supporting heart health. How else can one support vascular health, bypassing medications and their risks, yet still experience a real positive effect? As it turns out, the answer has been known since ancient times. It is simple and accessible to everyone. Ancient wisdom embodied in movement. The great scholar and physician Avicenna, who lived 1,000 years ago, did not use modern terms like hypokinesia or thrombosis, yet his knowledge was far ahead of his era and remains relevant to this day. He closely observed people, analyzed their lifestyles, and drew conclusions that anticipated the development of medicine by centuries. His advice, after eating, do not sit, do not lie down, take a walk, contains profound wisdom. Movement is not merely physical activity, it is a life force, a powerful signal to the body, urging it to continue functioning and cleansing itself. When a person spends hours in an immobile state, blood, like stagnant water, begins to thicken. Blood vessels lose elasticity, and oxygen does not reach cells in sufficient quantities. This leads to health problems that could otherwise be avoided. Avicenna noted that people leading active lifestyles lived longer and maintained mental clarity into old age. He did not advocate for exhausting workouts, but advised light warm-ups, neck rotations, and arm movements to get the blood flowing. In the morning, it's better not to eat immediately, but to gently awaken the body. A few simple exercises and deep breathing will provide invaluable help to the blood vessels. If long periods of sitting work are anticipated, it is necessary to periodically stand up and walk around the room to avoid blood stagnation and clot formation. Surprisingly, these simple pieces of advice are effective even today, without the use of any medications. However, this is only part of the solution, as vascular health depends not only on movement, but also on what we drink. When the feeling of routine constricts the body, and the soul yearns for a breath of fresh air, remember that even the most ambitious journeys begin with a small step, the first step towards change. Water, temperature, and internal disposition play a key role in maintaining vital energy. The great physician and philosopher Avicenna viewed water not merely as a thirst-quenching liquid, but as an animated element capable of both bestowing healing and inflicting harm. His instruction was, consume warm water so that it flows freely through the vessels, expanding them rather than causing undesirable constriction. Modern scientific research confirms the wisdom of these words. Cold water indeed provokes vascular spasms, especially in older individuals. Warm water, conversely, stimulates gentle blood circulation, preventing painful spasms and sharp fluctuations in arterial blood pressure. Avicenna also highly valued the healing properties of lemon, cinnamon, saffron, and ginger, seeing them not just as aromatic spices, but as powerful natural medicines. These gifts of nature contribute to blood thinning, vessel cleansing, and impart a feeling of lightness and freedom of movement. One of Avicenna's favorite beverages was an infusion of bay leaf with added cinnamon and honey. The sage observed that regular consumption of this elixir before bedtime promoted deep and restful sleep, normalized heart rhythm, and bestowed vigor and energy in the mornings. However, Avicenna's most profound revelation was the realization that emotional state has no less significant an impact on the condition of blood vessels than diet and physical activity. Rage, anxiety, terror. These powerful negative emotions provoke the constriction and narrowing of blood vessels, increasing blood viscosity. The great physician advised, avoid eating in anger, refrain from drinking in anxiety, and do not surrender to sleep in fear. Before going to bed, it is recommended to consume a warm beverage, create a calm environment, and perform several deep breaths. In this way, one supports their blood vessels without resorting to complex medical procedures. But why are these simple truths forgotten today? Why do we often prefer medication over elementary and natural solutions? The answer to this question lies in the concluding lines of this narrative. Your heart continues to work tirelessly, keenly attuned to your lifestyle and the decisions you make. And every evening it pauses in anticipation. Will you subject it to another overload by persisting in old habits, or will you grant it the much-needed respite for recovery? The choice is yours, and this choice is not about fleeting pleasure, but about the duration of your life, about the opportunity to savor every moment, breathing it in fully. True health is not an exhausting battle against an ailment that has already manifested itself, but rather a wise way of life where illness simply has no loopholes for penetration. The impeccable condition of blood vessels is not a random gift of fortune or genetic favor, but the logical outcome of simple, yet consistent and well-calibrated steps taken day after day. Serene night's sleep, measured physical activity, maintaining warmth, a balanced diet, and sensitive management of your emotional reactions. These are the cornerstones upon which the health of your vascular system rests,